It's time to make it, just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Welcome to another episode of You Can Make It. I'm David Farrell, the old fat guy. Today I'm going to make something that brings back great memories to me. When my mother used to take me shopping downtown Vancouver, she'd take me to the Woolworth lunch counter, and to be a grown-up, I'd order Salisbury steak because it sounded so adult. But today I'm going to make my version, which is much better than I used to have. It is just a really classic comfort food. I'm going to start off though by showing you a way to cut onions thin sliced to get an equal length on them, because that's one of the ingredients we need. So all you have to do to make that ingredient and cut it thin is get a regular onion, and instead of trying to slice it like this, we're going to cut it lengthwise. And just cut it in half and take the outer layer of skin off. And cut the bulb end and the root end off. Now, if you now take it and cut it like this, all the lengths will be the same. It's much easier to cut than the other way. And then when you get to the end and it's a little harder to hold up, just flip it down. So that's how I do thin sliced onions in a hurry when a recipe calls for them. Now let's just get on to making our Salisbury steak. Now that I've got that ingredient ready, I'll just clear my workspace here. We're going to start off by putting some breadcrumbs and some egg in a bowl. That gets the breadcrumbs moistened and gives you a better consistency. So I just have an egg that I'm just going to crack into my bowl. Give it a little bit of a beat. And if you're like me and got a shell in there, just pull it out. There we go. Just give it a bit of a beat. You don't need it really mixed up. You just need to get a little bit of... Okay, and then I have here 150 milliliters or 2/3 of a cup of breadcrumbs. Add that to your eggs and mix it in. It just is going to make it a better consistency later. There's the piece I was looking for. So you got the mixed in. Now we're going to put the rest of our flavoring ingredients in, which are 15 milliliters or 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. So we'll put some of that in. And we have here 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of coarse black pepper. And now we're just going to add in 700 grams or 1.5 pounds of ground beef. And we'll just put that in. And now you just want to mix all this together. So as we've mixed the seasonings into the meat, we're going to put our last ingredient in, which is 150 to 175 milliliters of finely chopped onion. And just, again, mix it up until it's spread through the meat. Now that we've got the onions all mixed in, we need to form this into 4 Salisbury steaks. So just take the meat out and put it on a counter. And you need to divide it into 4 parts. So we'll just cut it in half and cut it in quarters. Now you want to form it into about 1/2-inch ovals. Don't worry about the shape being perfect. What you're trying to do is make a homemade dish, not something perfect. You can buy molds that'll make it look perfect, but then it looks like you bought it from the store. So just make each of the patties into a nice oval about 1/2 inch thick. Now these ovals will swell up when you cook it, so it's going to come out looking a little bit more like a thicker ball type shape, but don't worry about that. Now I'm just going to bring over a preheated non-stick fry pan that I'm going to brown up the Salisbury steaks in. I love the sound of that sizzle. This is preheated to medium high or about 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit in an electric fry pan. We're going to just brown these on both sides, not cook them, just get them browned, which will take 4 to 5 minutes. These have been cooking for 2 to 3 minutes on this side. We're just going to give them a quick flip. And you'll see that nice dark brown color on there. That's just exactly what you want. And we'll just give it 2 or 3 minutes on that side too. These have been cooking for about a total of 5 to 6 minutes just to get browned on both sides. And now we're going to take them out of the pan. Just put them on a plate. Oh, look at that gorgeous color. So we're going to turn the heat down in our pan to what would be medium on the stove or about 350 degrees in an electric fry pan. We're going to put 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of butter in and just let it melt until it's nice and bubbly. Now, we're going to put in that half onion that we sliced thinly into the butter. And we're going to add 1 cup of chopped mushrooms, or 250 milliliters. And lastly, 1 clove of minced garlic. And then we're also going to put in 2 milliliters or a half teaspoon of thyme, dried thyme. And we just want to cook this and stir it around until it's soft and just getting a bit of color. This is going to take 3 to 4 minutes. So this has been cooking for about 3 minutes, and you'll see that it's just getting a touch of color on the onions. You don't want them browned, you just want them to pick up the color from the beef in the bottom of the pan from when you cook the beef. So once you've got them to this color, we're going to add 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Just sprinkle it over it. And you're going to stir this for a couple of minutes too, because you want the flour to get a little bit of a toasty taste. It makes the sauce taste better. Just stir it together. For this, you want to keep stirring it pretty well for the full 2 minutes. I've been cooking the flour on the onions and mushrooms for 2 minutes, and it's time to add some liquid ingredients to make the gravy for Salisbury steak. Salisbury steak has the best gravy. What I have here is 375 milliliters or 1 2/3 cup of beef stock. You can use commercial or make your own or whatever you'd like. Just pour it over the top. And my secret ingredient that isn't in most recipes for Salisbury steak, and it might sound disgusting, but it's 15 milliliters of ketchup. The vinegar and the sweet in the ketchup, just that little touch makes the sauce taste better. So we'll just put 15 milliliters or 1 tablespoon of ketchup in with our sauce. And we want to stir it around to get it all mixed together. and get the flour mixed in to the beef stock. Now, I'm going to turn my heat down to about 250 degrees Fahrenheit or just above a simmer if you're on the stove. And you want to stir this around until that stock comes to a boil. Our onions and gravy have just come to a boil, and you'll see that it's thickening up just a bit. So what we're going to do now is put the steaks back in the gravy. Now, a little thing I like to do is flip it so you get a little bit of gravy on both sides. It just gives the Salisbury steaks a better appearance if there was some gravy on the top while they finish off this cooking. And we're going to put a lid onto the Salisbury steaks. And because these are quite thick, I'm going to let them sit for 12 minutes, at which point we'll check and make sure they're done. The Salisbury steak have been simmering for 12 minutes. And they are done. I'm just going to take the steaks out of the pan and line them up on a serving platter. You'll note that the underside always looks better because a bit of fat will come out the top. So I just like to flip them over. There we go. And now we just want the gravy over the top of them. So, and those onions. It's the onions and the mushrooms, in my opinion, that make Salisbury steak. There we go. So, try not to splash around as much as I do. There we are. And there you have a nice platter of Salisbury steak. Now, it's a good idea to let this sit for a minute or two, even 3 minutes before you serve it. It just lets the flavors marry through the beef. The Salisbury steaks have sat just for 2 to 3 minutes. You can see they're nice, still nice and steamy. So I'm just going to move one over to a plate. Just use a nice spoon so you get some gravy with it too. And we'll just put her over on the plate. Make sure you get some nice gravy to put on top of it. And of course, anybody who's watched this show knows that this is my favorite part, where I get to taste the food because it is always just the best. So let's try a little bit of our Salisbury steak. You see it's plumped up to become thicker in a nice sort of ballish shape. You got wonderful onions, mushrooms, gravy, and beef. It's beefy, the gravy's creamy, the onions give a sweet taste to it, the mushrooms make the sauce richer. This is a great Salisbury steak, and of course, you can make it.
In this recipe, David made Salisbury steak with gravy. The ingredients for the steak are 1 egg beaten, 150 milliliters of dry breadcrumbs, 15 milliliters of Worcestershire sauce, 1 milliliter of salt, 3 milliliters of black pepper, 700 grams of ground beef, 150 milliliters of onion, finely chopped. And for the gravy, 25 milliliters of butter or margarine, half an onion cut lengthwise and sliced thin, 250 milliliters of chopped mushrooms, 1 clove of garlic minced, 2 milliliters of dried thyme, 25 milliliters of flour, 375 milliliters of beef stock at room temperature, 15 milliliters of ketchup. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it. It's time to make it. Just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Thanks for watching another episode of You Can Make It with the Old Fat Guy. That's me, David Farrell. Today we're going to make a barbecue chicken on a gas grill. Now, a lot of us have gas grills and we just cook burgers and steaks and that kind of thing. But I think if you can cook a great chicken, you're the master of the grill, so that's what we're going to do. One of the problems with cooking a chicken on a gas grill is it's big and it's tall, and to cook it all the way through, it tends to burn the skin before the meat gets cooked. So we're going to use a technique called spatchcocking, which lets you cut the bird up so it lies flat. And I'll show you how to spatchcock a chicken right now. We have here about a 3-pound frying chicken. Just make sure there's no parts in it. If there are, take them out and save them for making stock. Flip it over so the breast side is down on your cutting board and the drumsticks are facing towards you. Take a pair of poultry shears and you just want to cut down both sides of the backbone. There's one side, and we'll cut down the other side of the backbone. And that gets rid of the backbone. Save it for soup too. I'm sorry, just don't throw that stuff out. It's nice to have good chicken stock and you can use that. Then you'll notice that inside the chicken is a triangular shaped breastbone. You want to cut that out. So you start by just taking a sharp paring knife and start working down the edges of that triangular shaped bone. And then take your fingers in and run them down it and push the meat off of it. But don't cut all the way down or you'll end up cutting through the skin. Once you've cut each side of that, take your shears and cut through the rib bones all the way, just like that. And cut through them again on the other side. Now that you've got that done, you just want to slowly start slicing the meat so it peels away from the bone until you get all the way to the bottom of that triangular bone. Just keep slicing down. Once you get most of the way through, then just take your fingers and pull that up a little bit like that so you can get your knife under it. And then slice along under the triangular breastbone until it all comes out just like that. You have now spatchcocked a chicken. And what it does is when you flip it over, it lets the chicken lie flat so that when you cook it on a grill, it doesn't stand up high and you get a nice even cook through the whole chicken and you'll get a delicious barbecue chicken. Now that you've got the chicken spatchcocked though, we're going to season it. We're going to use a rub on it. And the rub I'm going to use is the most basic of barbecue rubs. I just mixed together 15 milliliters or 1 tablespoon of paprika, 15 milliliters and 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 1 milliliter or 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. And just mix that together in a bowl. It'll be more than you need, but you can use it for other things. So now that you've got that mixed up, you want to get it under the skin so it flavors the meat. Just take your finger and push it under the skin at the top of the breast and sweep around and lift the skin carefully off the breast. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we want to get it under the meat on the thighs. So we lift the skin at the edge of the thigh. Now this is a little harder sometimes, but just keep lifting and working your finger under there. And eventually it will slide under. And then work it down right over the drumstick meat. Same thing on the other side. Just get your finger under the skin. And as I say, sometimes it's a little stickier on the skin here. It sticks a bit better, but just keep pulling at it. There we go. So you get your finger under the skin and work it underneath. So now that you've got the skin pulled off both sides of the breast and the thighs, we want to work a little bit of the rub. I use about 1 milliliter for each section. Now lift the whole up and drop it in. If this comes in contact with the chicken, it's contaminated and has to be washed right away. You couldn't put it back in there to contaminate the rest of the rub. So just put that in and rub it down so it goes all the way around that cavity, and repeat that with the other 3 cavities. It's not hard. It's a lot easier as you practice. So your second one will be easier than your first one. And the last cavity. And just rub it in. Now, I like to put the sauce under the skin too, because otherwise the sauce tends to just sit on top of the skin and not add flavor. I've just got a commercial barbecue sauce here. Use whichever is your favorite barbecue sauce. And this time I'm going to take a couple of milliliters, or about a half a teaspoon, and again, drop it from a little bit away. You don't want to contaminate the sauce. And rub the sauce under the skin. Same thing on each of the cavities. Just dump it in and rub it in. There's nothing like adding flavor to your chicken. Everybody will want to know how you got the flavor into the meat. Just tell them you're a genius. There's no need to let them know how easy it is. And the last cavity. And rub it in. Okay, now that you've got the cavities and under the skin, you're going to want to get a rub over the skin because the rub has sugar in it and it'll brown up and make the skin much tastier. So once again, make sure the spoon doesn't come in contact with the chicken. Just sprinkle it over the chicken with the spoon. Now, rub it in and look for places where you haven't managed to get any rub yet. And make sure you get underneath the wings. And you also want to note places where it isn't very thick and put some more rub on it. So you've got the chicken all rubbed up with the rub, and now I'm just going to take it out to the barbecue. You'll note that I have my barbecue set up so that the temperature inside is between 300 and 350 degrees. I did that by turning off one of the burners. This barbecue has 3 burners, and I've turned the center one off because you don't want any direct heat under the chicken. And I've turned the other 2 very low to keep that temperature of about 300 degrees. If you have a barbecue with 2 burners, turn one off and put the chicken on the side that's turned off and turn the other one down to low. Now you want to make sure this chicken doesn't stick to your grill, so if you just put a bit of vegetable oil in a bowl and take a paper towel and rub the grill, it's much less likely to stick. So now I'll just put the chicken on the grill. You want to start it out with the skin side down to get some browning on it first. And we're just going to let it sit for about 15 minutes to get some browning. Our chicken's been sitting skin side down for about 15 minutes, and we're just trying to get a bit of crisp on it. So you'll see how it doesn't stick too much because of the oil we put on. And we're just going to flip it over. And you see the nice golden color. Now, it's going to sit and cook like this for up to about an hour, but we're going to start checking it at 45 minutes because we want the internal temperature to be 165 degrees. That's how you'll know it's ready to put the barbecue sauce on it. It's been 45 minutes since we put the chicken in and flipped it. And after flipping it, you'll note that it's got a really beautiful golden color on it. But the only way to make sure it's safely cooked is to use an instant read thermometer. You want to put it in the thickest part of the breast and make sure it's over 165 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 171, so we're fine. The chicken is safe from salmonella and other bacteria. Now's the time that we're going to put some sauce on it. You want to put a good generous brushing of your favorite barbecue sauce on it because I like my chicken sticky. Make sure you get it under the wings and everything. go. And get it around the edges. I want good, gooey, sticky chicken. And this chicken just has to sit for 15 to 20 minutes to let the sauce cook onto it and glaze. I've brought the chicken in from the grill, and you'll notice the wonderful color, and the sauce is just cooked perfectly all over the chicken. Now with the chicken, you have a couple of choices. You can carve it like you would your turkey dinner or whatever, or you can cut it in pieces. It's usual with barbecue to cut it in pieces, so that's what I'm going to do. So as you look at the chicken, it falls into some basic parts. I usually like to start by cutting the drumstick off. Just cut into the meat and just slice it off, and do both drumsticks. And you'll see how easily the thighs come off. That one just fell off on its own. So we'll cut the thighs off. And we'll put them on a plate just to get them ready to serve. Now, the chicken wings are next. Just slice into the meat, cut some of the white meat off with them, and put them on the plate to serve. Now you're left with the two breast halves. Just cut them down the middle. And I like to cut them again across it to give 4 white meat portions, because a lot of people like white meat. So we'll just cut across it and make 4 white meat portions. Just like that. And your chicken is ready to serve. Of course, now we have to taste it. So let's just take a little piece of the chicken and put it on the platter. And I'm not going to use a knife and fork because barbecue is meant to get your fingers dirty or whatever. So let's just dive into it and give it a bite. Really good taste from the barbecue sauce. The rub gets a little salty spiciness. The skin is crispy and delicious. This is an absolutely great barbecue chicken, and you can make it.
In this episode, David prepared barbecue chicken with a barbecue rub. The whole chicken used weighs approximately 1.5 kilograms. The ingredients for the barbecue rub are 15 milliliters of paprika, 15 milliliters of brown sugar, 5 milliliters of kosher salt, and 1 milliliter of cayenne. Also used was 125 milliliters of barbecue sauce. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it.